You are the role model for not only building a community from scratch, building a yeshiva, taking the elite of Klal Yisrael, just others did not necessarily look at your students like they were the elite. And we'd love to hear from you, your thoughts, how you were able to inspire thousands of Talmidim to love Hashem and love Yiddishkeit. As we do that, you have one of your special students in the audience here, Rabbi Shlomo Stillerman. If we can ask him to come up just for a brief moment and share with us his story, and then you'll lead off from that for your thoughts.
100%.
I'm humbled and honored to be here on the stage. My name is Shlomo Stillerman. 21 years ago, my life looked very, very different. I come from a loving, amazing family, great parents, good rabbeim. But inside, I had many, many challenges, many struggles. And I questioned my own abilities. Tonight, I'm going to share with you a very short story, which was a turning point in my life. A winter's man at Waterbury, not a particularly good winter's man. Hold the applause, please. Not having the zitzfleisch to sit down with my Gemara, I'm walking through the halls and I decide to stroll into my Rebbe, Rabbi Yitzchak Meir Fishman's office, to chaf a shmooze. And after 2-3 minutes, Rebbe looks at me. He says, "Would you like a cold beer?" Took me by surprise because I'm not much of the beer enthusiast, neither was he. Most of our conversations were about Gemara, Rashi, life. So I was intrigued and said, "Sure, what are you serving?" "Miller Lite." But there's a catch. He said, "I want you to walk back into Beis Medrash, sit down by your Gemara, and learn 6 new blot Gemara. And at 6 o'clock, come back and I have the beer waiting for you and I'll share it." I say, "Rebbe, it's 5 o'clock. That's 60 minutes. 6 blot? I've barely learned 6 blot the whole Zman. You want me to learn 6 blot in 60 minutes? It's impossible." Rebbe looked at me and he said, "Stillerman, never tell yourself what's impossible. You know what the problem is? I believe you can do it. But now," he said, looking at his watch, "you only have 59 minutes left." I dashed out of his office into the Beis Medrash. I sit down, holding my Baba Kama, and I blocked out the rest of the room. There was no doors, there was no lights, there was no people, there was no chairs, there was no Sidurim, Chumashim. It was just me, my Gemara, and my Rebbe's voice in my head. "Stillerman, never tell yourself what's impossible." And for 59 minutes, I sat there, line by line, page by page. And when my watch said 6 o'clock, I ran back to his office. I knocked on the door and I threw it open. I could feel my face was red, having just ran a marathon. And I looked my Rebbe in his eyes and I said, "Let's have that Miller Lite now." That was a turning point for me, because not only did I realize that I could achieve far, far more than I thought was possible, 6 blot in 60 minutes, but I learned that night that when a Rebbe believes in a Talmud, there is nothing that's impossible. And I'll fast forward 14 years and 1,400 miles from Waterbury, Connecticut to this city, Miami Beach, where my wife's sitting in the corner and myself founded an organization, a Kiruv organization called Yehudi. One of our supporters is right here. Thank you, Mr. Hartman. For those of you who don't know Yehudi, it's a Kiruv organization that was born with a mission to be Makar of the tens and tens of thousands of college students and millennials across America. And 7 years since inception, today, I'm proud to say that Yehudi employs 25 Rabbanim, Rebbitzins, admin. Yehudi is on 7 branches from Miami to Tallahassee across Florida, with 13 more branches scheduled to open across America in the next 3 years. Yehudi has dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of Bali Tshuva, and people say, what's the key to the success? What's the secret? Rebbe, you know what the secret is? Because Yehudi was built on what Rebbe taught so many years ago. It's a core value that's written in our handbook. It's a core value that every Rav, every Rebbitzin reviews again and again. The value is every student that walks into our room is and can be better than us. We have Talmidim in front of us, and a boy walks in with jeans and a pony or khakis and a shaven head, and we realize that this could be the next Rabbi Akiva about Tshuva that transforms the world. You're sitting in front of a room of people that never came to a Torah Shir. We're teaching them Torah. And we realize that it's very possible that the next keynote presenter at a Torah U'Mesorah Convention is going to be one of these students. Today, Yehudi exists because a long time ago, a Rebbe believed in a Talmud. The Jewish people's future is so bright because so many Rabbanim, so many Rebbitzins believe in the Talmidim, look up to their Talmidim. And I want to publicly thank my Rebbe, Rabbi Yitzchak Meir Fishman, for believing in me. And I want to publicly thank the Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Aaron Kaufman, who taught so many times. Who taught us that a Rav is Gematria 202, which is the Gematria of Ani Ma'amin. A Rebbe means Ani Ma'amin Shali. I believe in me. A Rebbe is someone who is an Ani Ma'amin Shali, the one who believes in me, and the rest is all commentary. Thank you.
I think I'm speechless.
Yeah, not much more you have to say.
The truth be told, that when we have emunah in our Talmidim, when we have emunah in ourselves, really we're having emunah in our Kadosh Baruch Hu. There's nothing that we can accomplish by ourselves. We all need that siyata d'shmaya. And when we believe in people, and we have no limitations to our belief, then our Kadosh Baruch Hu, Midah Keneged Midah, believes in our abilities, and he surpasses all limitations. We can do the unlimited. We can do what we think is impossible. We say every day in our tefillas, we give hodot to Kadosh Baruch Hu, Al Nisecha Shebachol Yom Imanu. On the Nisim Hagluyim, the Nisim HaNestorim, that Kadosh Baruch Hu does with us daily. Val Niflosecha V'Tovasecha Shebachol Eis. The only ones that can limit our own children, our Talmidim, are ourselves. We set limitations for them. And we really bring down their ability to believe in themselves and to believe in their growth. And confidence breeds confidence. And when you can have that confidence in somebody else, he will develop the confidence in himself, and it's beyond anything, beyond any expectations. We as parents and Rebbeim have to be very careful not to bring down the core values of Yiddishkeit, not to bring down the abilities of our Talmidim. It's interesting, we hear many times. I'd like to say something quickly from Rav Hutner. My Rosh Yeshiva, in a letter to a person who was not a Talmud. This letter was written over 60 years ago. And somebody asked him advice on a personal level. And Rav Hutner writes as follows in his letter. He says, when a wagon travels over on ground, what happens, he makes an imprint. And when you have that imprint, many cars, many wagons, many horses could travel that road. He creates the path for the future. But when you have a boat, a ship, on high seas, and it travels, it creates no imprint. No matter how many times it goes through the sea, there's no imprint for a future boat to follow that path. He says 60 years ago, the teenagers of our generation are more similar to high seas, to turbulent seas, with a boat going over those seas, than to a path that was created by the past. And he says, therefore, if I don't know you personally, I cannot give you advice. There are no comps. There are no similarities. In many areas, one nefesh is different than another nefesh. I can't give you proper advice until I know you. And that is true by all of us. We have to get to know our children. Our children, trust me, know us very well. I don't believe we really know our children extremely well. We don't know them intimately. We don't know their thoughts. We don't know their nefesh. We don't know their feelings. We don't know their struggles. They are not the best communicators. That's true about parents. It's true about rebbeim as well. Until we give proper advice to our Talmidim, we have to really understand them, know them. We have to bond with them. We have to have that relationship. And after we have that relationship, then we could guide them. They will trust us, and there are no limitations. One of the hardships of this generation, and it's a trend, and it's not a healthy trend, we're pretty, not just we dumb down the expectations, but we always tell our children that we're complacent with you. It's okay. If you don't make it, if you don't struggle, we love you. And we do. We have that unconditional love. But when we do that and we're complacent in small growth or no growth, as long as they're with us, so we cannot create passion. Indifference is the opposite of passion, and complacency is the enemy of passion. And many times we're too complacent, and then we talk about passion. We can't be complacent. We have to be invested in their growth. We have to believe in them, but we also have to understand it's step by step, and it takes a lot of time, effort, pain, and eventually we'll be extremely successful.
Thank you. Rosh Yeshiva, thank you. Before we turn to the last panelist, I want to turn it over to Strully, but before we turn it over to Strully, I'm sure no one in this room means to be in any way disrespectful. And I am as guilty as anyone else of talking in a room when there are panelists here. So I'm always guilty as charged. But I can tell you, sitting up here, there's sure a lot of noise coming on up here. So if you want to talk, there is a barbecue outside. We're running late. You can hit the barbecue now. If you want to stay here, the panelists put a lot of time, and let's give them the respect they deserve. So my apologies for asking that. Strully, you're getting live audience feedback. Do you want to jump in now, or you want Rabbi Hauer to go first? Rabbi Hauer. So a few years ago, I was in Baltimore, and I was davening by the shul of my very dear and esteemed lifelong chaver, near lifelong Rabbi Moshe Hauer. And right before Musaf, I got called into the kitchen. And the Balabatim called me into the kitchen, and they said, we're going to make Kiddush before Musaf. It's called a Blue Label Kiddush. What's it called? There's some name for it. But the rabbi requires that we have a Dvar Torah before we do the illegal Kiddush. So to me, that speaks volumes for Rabbi Hauer's role, both as a Rav and today as one of the greatest leaders of Klal Yisrael, leading the Orthodox Union into a stronger and better future for all of us. Rabbi Hauer.
Thank you very much, Rav Aaron. I want to acknowledge something. It was spoken before a little bit earlier this evening. Rav Aaron spoke about some things which were born out of the President's Conference. I think we have to recognize that the Gadol sitting immediately to my right, Rabbi Kaufman, the concept of Waterbury, the yeshiva of Waterbury, the community of Waterbury, was a creation of Torah U'Mesorah before the President's Conference. And what that has done is not just created an incredible institution and now a network of institutions, it has moved the ball on chinuch for every yeshiva, for every place. The language that Rabbi Kaufman and his staff have brought into chinuch has been transformative. The idea that Rabbi Kaufman has spoken about several times, and we have discussed many times over Shabbos, that this really starts within not just a lack of passion for Yiddishkeit, but an indifference about life, and the need really to first address things on a human level before we start to work on the Torah and the Yiddishkeit which is built on top of it. We don't have a ton of time, and there have been two topics that have been placed on the table for this Shabbos. One of them has a very quantifiable goal, very specific. There are salaries for moros, they are shameful, they are embarrassing, they have to be addressed, and so this group will figure it out. They're going to raise the bar, they'll set a goal, and they'll be able to meet it. It's very specific. Passion for Yiddishkeit is not so specific. And the determination of all of us was that we did not want to just spend Shabbos here talking about something where we'll have nice inspirational words and familiar ideas and walk away, and the ICIs will be parches ba'avir. The letters will fly away. The ideas will fly away. We, all of us gathered together here, have to move the ball on this issue. If it's named as a significant issue for Klal Yisrael, which we recognize, and it has been since the days of the Nevi'im, we want to really do something about it and increase the kayach of tefillah. You know, I work for the Orthodox Union. We don't really have a specific role in school curricula. We, Baruch Hashem, play a role to some degree through our Teach Advocacy Network in bringing, Baruch Hashem, many tens of millions of dollars of government aid for schools, but we deal mostly with the community generally. And that's where this partnership, where this issue has to develop, because passion and the lack of same is not something we should be pointing the finger at our schools about. It should be something we should be pointing the finger at ourselves about. So I would like to make a very specific suggestion, a very specific proposal. And it's built on something that was said today by the Rosh Yeshiva of the Long Beach Yeshiva, Rav Chaim Yeshua Hoberman, who gave a beautiful and pointed drasha speaking to the issues which we're talking about. As Rabbi Hoberman said, we need to be working on ourselves. Every person, we need to be spiritually ambitious. We need to be learning Musar, something that's making each and every one of us grow. And he pointed to the consummate mitzvahs hanoshim melumada, as Rabbeinu Yaina says, which is tefillah. I would like to take a survey of this crowd, which I've taken many times before. I would like to know anyone in this room, men, women, who is satisfied with their tefillah, please stand up. In my career of asking that question, I met one person who said that he was satisfied with his tefillah, and I don't trust him about anything anymore. We invest how much time every day in tefillah? How much time? Let's say an hour, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, depending which minyan at Shiners you daven at. An hour a day. And how do you feel afterwards about it? You come at the end of the day and say, good gedaventheit. Or maybe, Rosh Hashanah, you say that, maybe the first slichas. Like, how do we invest so much in something so fundamental? And in the end, and a little bit of effort can make it into something, and to make it into the best Musar Seder. If I can, I would like to share with you perhaps my favorite story of tefillah. In 1929, there was the terrible tragedy in Hebron, the massacre in Hebron, which was the riots that were happening then in Eretz Yisrael. What was left of the yeshiva of Hebron came to Yerushalayim, and Leil Rosh Hashanah, before Mariv, the remnants of the yeshiva of Hebron were sitting there, they were learning, before Mariv, preparing, and Reb Leib Chasman, the mashkiach of the yeshiva of Hebron, got up and went over to a bacher whose name was Reb Betzalel Shikovitsky, who was later the author of the Mishkan Betzalel, the Machaber, the Mishkan Betzalel, who was then a bacher. And he said, Betzalel, I want you to daven Mariv for the yeshiva. And he was shocked about tefillah, Rosh Hashanah, for what was left of Yeshivas Hebron, Slobodka, a 19-year-old. And the Mashgiach said, Betzalel, I want you to daven Mariv. He knew that Reb Betzalel was a Baal Regesh. It's 1929. A yeshiva has been uprooted from its home, from its place. 60 korbanos, I think. 60 plus korbanos. Battered. Not destroyed, but battered. And Betzalel gets up to lead the tzibur in Mariv. Baruch Has Hashem HaMevorach, first bracha of the Birchas Kriyas Shema. And then he gets to the second bracha, to Avas Olam. And he says, and he's davening, and he says, V'yavoscha tasir mimenu li'olamim. Rabbeinu Shalom, your love will never leave us. And he stops. And he says again, V'yavoscha al tasir mimenu li'olamim. And over again. Together with the tzibur, with the Sheiris HaPleita of Yeshivas Hebron, they said over and over again, V'yavoscha al tasir mimenu li'olamim. Rabbeinu Shalom, your love, we were just destroyed, decimated. Your love never leaves us. That was a tefillah. It was also a Musar Seder. It was also Musar with Sfasayim Dolkais of Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. It was repeating an idea that you wanted to bring into your heart. Tefillah is an opportunity. So I would like to suggest, and I want everybody to sign up, this is cheaper than the appeal you're going to get from the next panel. I want us to be able to say that from the President's Conference of Torah U'Mesorah of 2021, there started a new style in Klal Yisrael, a moda, an expectation, a norm. And the norm is that every Jew in Klal Yisrael, every man and every woman, every day, b'chabura, with a few people, maybe it's with their Rav, maybe with a few friends on the phone, maybe it's listening to a chizuk of a WhatsApp, but invest something in thinking about their tefillah, in focusing on something on their tefillah, that we're working on it, that we're growing. Imagine Imagine if our children don't just see us running to Chap Mariv, but they see us being shoya sha'achas, thinking for a minute and saying, how am I going to make this meaningful? Imagine if it's not just another obligation that we have to check off the list. If everyone, it's a simple thing. It's an investment of a couple of minutes to justify the use of an hour that we do every day. Can we start such a style? Maybe we could create an Alt Tefillah app. I'm serious.
Thank you, Rabbi Hauer. Srilly, I don't know what's going on your end of the table there.
We're going to jump in with the questions that keep coming. The main question I'm getting is from Manalim and Menahalos across the country who want to know how Rabbi Cutler got a room of 700 people quiet in under 10 seconds. They would love for you to teach them. I'm going to ask a question here. Maybe it's a little bit of a painful question. I would ask that the panelists, every single one of you with so much to say and so much insight and experience, somehow, in the benefit of Tayalas from tonight's, given the lateness of the hour, keep the answers as brief so that we could have productive dialogue and give people something to work with. The question is as follows. We're going to ask Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Aaron Shlita, to answer this one first. The question is like this. I come home from Shul Friday night, and the table is set, Shalom Aleichem, Eshes Chayil, Kiddush, and I feel no passion for reasons I'm not going into right now. Should I fake passion because my kids expect Tati to be excited, Yom HaShishi, Shalom Aleichem, to feel? Or should I be honest in the hope that honesty is also a value? What's better, fake passion or no passion?
Hard question. You can't fake passion. That's why it's not a question. Just like you can't fake belief. If you fake belief in somebody, they will see through that, and it's insulting. If you fake passion, people will see through it. And many times these dynamic speakers or characters, and I love you so much and you're so great, and then you hear them say it to the next person who doesn't know, and to the third person, it's insulting to you. You can't fake passion. The person has to really work on that passion. He might lose that one Friday night, but he has from Friday night to work on himself, to understand the Zmiris, to understand and bring his children into it. And fake is the worst. I believe fake is the worst thing in the world.
I certainly agree with Rabbi Kaufman. You can't fake passion. I think the notion of being honest, the notion of being honest and sincere, that you said, hard week, not feeling it so much right now.
He should tell the kid that he's not feeling it?
Sure. And let's try together. Let's try together. We're going to work together. It's not faking it when you try. It's not faking when you try. Ask. Say, I'm not feeling it. Does anybody see the malachim? Shalom aleichem. Anybody see the malachim? Let's get it going. Let's try. Let's try to just let it pass. That's indifference. To let it pass is indifference. To fake is garnished. To say I have a struggle and I try. Does anybody... nobody has a hard time admitting. You saw, did anybody stand up in the room when I asked if you have a hard time with davening?
No.
Because we have this tremendous admission. We're human beings. We're not perfect. Teach our children to make that acknowledgement. Show them that we're able to be honest with ourselves. That's the first step of growth.
Okay. Anybody else want to weigh in on this? Anybody want to weigh in, or should we move on?
I would say the same also like Rabbi Kaufman, that a person, you can fake it, but I think now it's Matzah Shabbos, you have the whole week to work on it, but a person should work, like I mentioned before, to make a geschmack, whether for means to learn the inyanim of Shabbos, the halachas of Shabbos, prepare medrashim, whether the kids like litter medrash says, these different ways to get yourself into it, to make it enjoyable, and you'll bring upon a passion on yourself. Another thing, if your kids are passionate and they enjoy it, sometimes you don't have a choice. Even if you come Friday night and you're tired and you're knocked out, and they're passionate about it and they're excited, And when you start Shalom Aleichem, they start singing with you, so their passion will fire you up as well, will make you passionate.
Okay, we're going to jump on to the next question. Quickly, I would only mention that the fact that this gentleman sent in this question shows that a little bit passionate about this he is, because he cared enough to send in the question. So that's something. The question is as follows. Rabbi Hauer, Rabbi Aaron, I need your services to retain some quiet here, maybe. The question is as follows. We talk so much, or we hear so much, about getting children excited to learn and excited about what they know, but not every child is academic, and some of them know very little. They're not learning very much. How can we get the non-academic child excited when he's not learning that much?
There isn't one path to excitement. There isn't one path to fulfillment. Not everybody was created to do the same thing. Wait. Not everybody was created to do the same thing. You know that there's a steer in the Gemara, or a kasha, which is asked by Tosfos from one Gemara to another. The Gemara says, it's quoted today by Gary Torgo in his speech, one of the Gemara says that the second question a person's going to be asked before he comes when he comes before the Rebbeinu Shalom is Kavata Itim L'Torah. In a different Gemara it says that the first thing, Tchilas Dinai Shel Adam, is on Divrei Torah. So is it the first question or the second question? Tosfos asks the kasha. Tosfos answers what he answers. Rav Yaakov Emden, I think it's also in the Marsha, Rav Yaakov Emden says in Siddur, it depends who. It depends who. For the person who's built for Talmud Torah, the first question is whether he learned Torah regularly. For the person who's not built for Talmud Torah, the first question is whether he did business properly. There's not one size that fits all. There's not one expectation that fits all. And it is absolutely, Rav Yisrael, an obligation for parents, for mechanchim, to find the passion in each child and to give them the opportunity to develop it.
If I could just add one thing, the concept Chanoch L'Nar Al Pi Darko, right? It's not just one path for every single child. There are multiple paths for each and every one. Not each child has every different path, but each child, you have to find the path for that child. And to say that it's only about the academics is really where you're going to run into issues with a lot of the children that we have, because there are so many that unfortunately struggle with the academic piece of it. They suddenly feel like a failure when someone says you're only supposed to be learning Gemara, you're only supposed to be an academic child, when there's so many other things and so many other beautiful things about Yiddishkeit that we can be pointing towards these children and telling them to put down their path. And I think that's something that we've missed out on a lot of these. We've heard a lot from a lot of different conversations this weekend that people are feeling like they're only being told that their child can go down one path and have to be an academic child. But the child can't do it. He feels ashamed and he feels like a failure. We can't do that anymore, and that has to change.
Could you repeat the question one more time? Could you repeat the question? Repeat the question one more time.
Repeat the question that came in?
Yeah.
We talk so much about getting children excited about what they're learning and excited with their learning. That works well for kids who are learning because they're not academically challenged. But kids, or children, students who have a harder time academically, how could they be excited with their learning if they're not learning that much?
All right. Let me admit, I'm not academic, and I love learning. And I don't think being academic has anything to do with loving learning. If I say many times to my Talmidim, if I'd be a guy, I'd be chayiv misa because of my love of learning. Love of learning comes from an excellence, success, and understanding of what I'm learning. It doesn't have to be exercise, it doesn't have to be Nesivos, it doesn't have to be Gemara. It has to be something that engages me. And everybody in that sense has something that they can learn. The question is what levels. You mentioned Rav David Newman's Varevna. That gets people excited in learning. But it has to be somewhere and somehow in learning. And we have that ability to excite every Talmud, every child in some area of learning, and let's not make it academics. Let's make it enjoyable, and to understand that the Rabbeinu was a Ram Ben Ahar, says the Ikar Mitzvah of Talmud Torah is a simcha in learning, and it has to be Havanas Halev. And when you have any level of understanding, you will eventually have that simcha. If I could add on one thing, and I want to add on to Rabbi Howard, about tefillah. There's a tefillah, I want to share something. A boy, I have a chavrusa in Maral, there's a boy, and he asked me, right before Rosh Hashanah, he wants to make a Kabbalah. And a Kabbalah that's going to be meeting for him every day. And then he said he'd like to be in tefillah. And then he said, what tefillah speaks to you that you're consistent in? And I shared with him a tefillah that I say, and I'm makbid every day inside. And I haven't missed a day, and he told me last week, neither has him. He has not either. And I think this could be a Kabbalah for every person in this room, every machanech, every parent. In Berachas HaTorah, it sounds like there are two bakashas in one tefillah. V'arevna Hashem Elokeinu es divrei soroscha b'finu u'b'fi amcha beis Yisrael. And we're talking about it should be sweet in our mouths, in the mouths of our friends. We don't mention our children. And then the next part, v'niya anachnu v'tzetzaenu. Then we mention our children, in Nusach Sfard, our grandchildren, v'tzetzai amcha beis Yisrael, and the children of all of Klal Yisrael. And it says kulanu. Kulanu means without exception. That means there's no exception to this rule. Kulanu yoidei shemecha. Knowing HaKadosh Baruch Hu means David b'HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That sense of intimacy with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'lomdei sorasecha l'shma, and to learn Torah l'shma. And the Eglei Tal, we all know that means, l'shma means b'simcha. And the question is, why in the first part you mention v'arevna, just ourselves, and only in the second part do we mention our children? And I think the pshat, and it's pasha pshat, is it's only one bakasha. V'niya anachnu is not a bakasha, it's a result. And it shall be, and it will be. The bakasha is, and that's a chiyuv upon, an obligation upon all of us. And that's where it begins. We ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu, beseech from Hashem, V'harevna Hashem Elokeinu es divrei soroscha b'finu v'fi amcha b'Yisrael. We're talking about ourselves. We have to get to an understanding of learning that we enjoy, that it's sweet by the parents, by the men, by the women. It has to be sweet. Divrei Torah has to be sweet, has to be common in our mouths. And we need siyata d'shmaya for that. And when we have that, so the end of the bakasha is v'niya, and it shall be, it will be, that both ourselves and our children, through our simchas HaTorah, it will be ored by them. Kulanu, every one of our children, will be yoidei shemecha. They will connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's vekis b'HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and there'll be a loy meisor asecha l'shma. They'll have the simchas HaTorah, kein yehi ratzon.
Thank you, Rabbi Kaufman, for closing.